Today's topic to warm us up is pilgrimage into the heart and mind of the Avatar. When we're first introduced to Ramakrishna, we're naturally astonished by his higher states of consciousness, never before recorded in such detail by witnesses who were present. We may be mesmerized by his miracles, documented by first-hand accounts, enchanted by his stories and parables that we can draw on throughout our lives, whenever or wherever the occasion arises. But when we go to meditate on this God-man, what is it that captivates our imagination and deepens our personal inner relationship with him? It is the heart and the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. So in the next hour, let's explore this profound aspect of the Avatar, and in so doing, deepen our own meditation upon him. How? By drawing on incidents in his life that captures special qualities that particularly attract us, that we can remember and meditate upon. For after all, our affection for people in our own lives revolves around particular incidents which leave a memory and that awaken certain precious emotions within us. It is by reliving those personal feelings that establish our bond with those we love or come to love. How then can we understand Ramakrishna? By studying the heart and the mind of the Avatar, in his own words and in the reminiscences of those who lived and associated with him. On August 15th, 1897, during the weekly meeting of the newly established Ramakrishna Mission, Girish Ghosh, the famous Bohemian dramatist, was asked his opinion of the Master as an avatar. "I shall be disheartened if there is another kind of God," he simply stated. "I went straight to the Master from a despicable house of ill fame, and he gave me a seat to sit on. He carried sweets for me from Dakshineshwar to the theater, a place that some people considered sinful. I have never received such love from anyone else. To me, the Master is God, an avatar. One word of his has transformed my life completely. It is not difficult to obey, to love, or to worship him," he said. "It is extremely difficult to forget him." The Avatar has a special home to draw devotees to him. That power, unconditional love. It is a tangible, felt force transmitted from the Avatar's heart to the devotee. What are the examples? What are other examples of such a heart? So expansive and unconditional, so intoxicating that it can actually be transmitted by a word, by a glance, by a touch. Durgachran Nag, a householder devotee of the Master, said, "After visiting the Master a few times, I realized that he was Lord Narayana himself. He was secretly enacting his divine play in Dakshineshwar." Someone asked, "How did you know this?" Nag Mahashaya replied, "The Master, out of his mercy, revealed to me his divine nature. Can anyone know him without his grace?" Once the Master asked Nag, "What do you think of me?" Durgachran saluted the Master with folded hands and replied, "You cannot hoodwink me anymore. Through your grace, I have come to know that you are the Supreme One." Immediately, the Master went into ecstasy. and touched Nag Mahashai's chest with his right foot. Suddenly, Nag Mahashai also went into ecstasy. He saw a divine light engulfing all the moving and unmoving objects of the world. With just a touch, the master opened up a divine realm to his devotee. So we see, not just with Nag Mahashai, but again and again, how the infinite realm of the avatar's heart and mind is transmitted by him to those who are receptive and opens up the superconscious reality within the heart and mind of such fortunate devotees. The avatar reaches across all social and caste laws to touch and bless such souls. Christ worked his miraculous power of forgiveness and unconditional love on Mary Magdalene. She came uninvited to Simon the Pharisee's house, wept as she washed Jesus' feet with her tears, wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and anointed with oil. Simon was shocked at such intimacy, but Jesus responded, Simon, suppose there was a creditor who had two debtors, one who owed 500 pence and the other 50. But when they had nothing, the creditor forgave them both. Tell me now, which of them will love him most? Simon said, I suppose the one who owed the most. Jesus said, you have judged right. Therefore, Mary Magdalene's many sins are forgiven, for she loved much. To Mary he said, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. This God-given peace is therefore said to be that that passeth all understanding, the peace that passeth all understanding. In the Ramakrishna Vedanta tradition, that peace is known as liberation. Swami Shivananda, monastic disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, once said, anyone who takes shelter under the Master with all sincerity and with his whole being, anyone who loves the Master will inevitably get liberation. Anyone. He then shared, have you heard the story of Rashik, who belonged to the lowest sweeper caste and who lived at Dakshineshwar? He used to call the Master Father. One day the Master was returning from the direction of the Panchavati, absorbed in a spiritual mood. At that time, Rashik knelt before him and prayed with folded hands, Father, why don't you bless me? What will be in store for me? The Master then assured him, you need have no fear. You will have your wish fulfilled. You will see me at the time of death. Swami Shankarananda, who was a disciple of Swami Brahmananda, then related, Rashik was a great devotee. He would satisfy himself with seeing the Master even from a distance. When the Master would go to the pine grove, Rashik would touch the Master's footprints with his forehead. After the Master's passing, Rashik was grief-stricken. His health broke down also. He could not work anymore. Gradually, he stopped coming to sweep the temple courtyard. But his daughter started to sweep, taking the place of Rashik, her father. Rashik was very sick. Before death, he asked his wife and others, you all eat your lunch early today. Don't come near me until I call you. It was 10 a.m. All of a sudden, his face beamed with joy. He cried out, Father, you have come, so you have not forgotten me. The avatar has the power to not only bestow liberation, but to transfer certain powers within his heart and mind to his close monastic disciples. When Sri Ramakrishna saw Hari Prasanna, the future Vijnananda Swami, he immediately recognized him as Jambavan, who fought the demon Ravana in the Rama incarnation. And this story, my guru used to tell us many times. He had heard it directly from Swami Vijnananda. That is why, though slight of build, Sri Ramakrishna then slapped his legs as a wrestler would, challenging his opponent. Can you wrestle? He said. Swami Vijnananda later related, I was surprised at this challenge. I thought to myself, what kind of a holy man is this? But I replied, yes, of course, I can wrestle. He then related, Ramakrishna came closer, smiling. He caught hold of my arms and began to shove me. But I was a strong, muscular young man, and I pushed him back to the wall. He was still smiling and holding me with a strong grip. Gradually, I felt a sort of electric current coming out of his hands and entering into me. That touch made me completely helpless. I lost all my physical strength. I went into ecstasy, and the hair of my body stood on end. Releasing me, the master said with a smile, well, you are the winner. Later, Swami Vijnananda revealed, it was he, Sri Ramakrishna, who conquered me. I have become his slave. When I fought with him, he took into himself all my strength. But what he, the young monk, received in return were powers of the mind and heart transmitted by Sri Ramakrishna, so that he could one day carry on the work of the Ramakrishna order as its president. What were some such powers of mind? Wisdom lies in knowing how to use a tool properly. Whether the tool is an instrument, our hands, or our mind. Swami Vijnananda explained from his own experience, you are the complete master of your mind and you can shape it as you like. When the mind is completely under your control, it will have nothing to exist on except noble thoughts. What does this mean? This elevated degree of control then manifests even in deep sleep, and with it a spiritual experience and power that saturates the recipient's body and mind daily. In this connection, Swami Hiranmoyananda, a disciple of Swami Shivananda, once as a young monk went to make pranam to Swami Vijnananda in his room at Bellarmine. He asked, Maharaj, how did you sleep? Swami Vijnananda replied, you know how I sleep? I quiet the mind and then withdraw my prana into the heart and then focus on the infinity of the Atman and dissolve into that. Astonished, the young monk replied, O Maharaj, we don't have to go to so much trouble. There are other powers of the mind manifest in the avatar. Desires normally inhabit the mind, but according to the sage Vashishta, there are two kinds of desires, pure and impure. We as seekers seek higher desires to combat our lower desires. That's yoga. First, intellectual desires to combat baser desires, then spiritual desires to combat mere intellectual desires. What kind of desires does the avatar have? First of all, the avatar's mind has a natural tendency to soar. So sometimes Sri Ramakrishna would manifest a desire to keep his mind down for the sake of the devotees. He explained, "My mind descends to the throat center so that I can teach all of you, but it is a struggle to keep it down there. Because I dwelt continually in non-dual knowledge for a period of 6 months, my mind is naturally inclined in that direction. It is difficult for me to bring my mind down without nurturing some little desires, such as, I shall do this, I shall eat that, I shall see this person, I shall go there, and so on. A desireless mind merges into samadhi. So Sri Ramakrishna had to create some desires to keep his mind at a lower level in order to teach human beings. But during sadhana, sometimes the master suffered from various physical symptoms, such as a burning sensation, sleeplessness, excessive hunger, and so on. Sri Ramakrishna described how he would suddenly be seized with a ravenous appetite that no amount of food could satisfy. No sooner had he eaten something than he would feel hungry again. The Bhairavi Brahmani, who initiated Sri Ramakrishna into the Tantra practices, reassured him that those who advance in spirituality pass through such unusual physical states. Unlike ours, the body-mind complex of the avatar is super sensuous. Second, avatars harbor the same desires as ordinary human beings. However, they may assume desires for a spiritual purpose. Sri Ramakrishna explained, sometimes I used to assume a rajasic mood in order to practice renunciation. Once I had the desire to put on myself a gold embroidered robe, wear a ring on my finger, and smoke a hubble bubble with a long pipe. Mathur Babu procured all those things for me. I wore the gold embroidered robe and said to myself after a while, mind, this is what is called a gold embroidered robe. Then I took it off and threw it away. I couldn't stand the robe anymore. Again, I said to myself, mind, this is called a shawl, and this a ring, and this smoking a hubble bubble with a long pipe. I threw those things away once for all, and the desire to enjoy them never arose in my mind again. Third, Sri Ramakrishna suffered great mental anguish before the arrival of his monastic disciples. He told them, there was no limit to my yearning to see you. My heart was wrung like a wet towel, and I was restless with pain. I would climb to the roof of the kuti and cry out at the top of my voice, come to me, boys. Where are you? I can't bear to live without you. I thought I would go mad. Then after some days, you began to come, one after another, and I calmed down. From time to time, Sri Ramakrishna also expressed a strong desire to meet with other devotees of God. Sri Ramakrishna also maintained the desire to keep his living quarters clean and orderly, and to have particular holy pictures hung in his room. In March 1884, he requested 2 pictures, one of a yogi seated before a lighted log, and another of a yogi smoking hemp and the charcoal blazing up as he pulls on it. He explained, such pictures kindle my spiritual consciousness as an imitation fruit awakens the idea of a real one. These are some of the unusual desires of the avatar that are prompted by his superconscious states of mind. In the avatar, we witness an unparalleled dichotomy of the mind and heart. the extraordinary power of renunciation, coupled with the power to love unconditionally. Sri Ramakrishna's renunciation and discrimination were unflinching. He renounced not only mentally, but physically, that which he knew stood in the way of his first vision of God. To destroy pride of his Brahmin lineage, early in his sadhana, the master cleaned a latrine with his own hands. To vanquish from his mind any desire for wealth, he practiced taking into one hand coins and in the other clods of dirt, saying repeatedly, "Rupee is clay and clay is rupee," impressing his mind in such a way he would then toss both into the Ganges and free himself from any sense of greed. Now, these are practices that we too can take up. How successful was his sadhana? Later, when Naran, the future Vivekananda, learned Sri Ramakrishna considered money to be a spiritual hindrance and could not bear its touch, he decided to test him. One day when Sri Ramakrishna was not in his room, Naran put a silver coin under the mattress of his bed. Without knowing of Naran's action, Sri Ramakrishna re-entered his room. But when he sat on his bed, he immediately cried out and jumped up in pain and asked someone to check his bed. The bed was searched and the coin was found. Naran was then convinced of the master's complete renunciation of gold. Now, Naran did this at the very beginning of Sri Ramakrishna's life, and some of us are very thankful that he did, because directly we see for ourselves this ability of the master, the superconscious ability. Furthermore, to firmly establish in his mind that God dwells in all beings, Sri Ramakrishna ate as prasad the leavings of beggars who had been fed at the Kali temple. He then conveyed on his head their leaf plates to the bank of the Ganges, where he then discarded them. He then swept clean the place where the beggars had eaten. Through the sheer power of his renunciation and discrimination, Sri Ramakrishna forced his body and senses to act contrary to basic human instincts, and was not satisfied with the success of his sadhana until he was completely freed from the 8 fetters: shame, hatred, fear, pride of caste, lineage, pride of good conduct, grief, and secretiveness. All these sadhanas and more reveal the power of Sri Ramakrishna's mental renunciation and its outcome, the purity and subsequent power of his mind. Likewise, Sri Ramakrishna was so unconditionally loving. Though he could read the minds of those who came to him at Dakshineshwar and Kasipur, with even the worldly people of Calcutta, he tried again and again to move their thoughts to a higher place. Those who were wealthy, learned, intelligent, and powerful would often come to argue with the master. But such was his great heart that he would ultimately have to touch them to remove their obstinacy. This naturally took a toll on his sensitive body, and his health would break down. Exasperated, he would then scold the Divine Mother. "Why do you bring all these worthless people here? They are like milk diluted with water 5 times over. My eyes are burning from smoke as I continually blow on the wet fuel to evaporate the water. I am reduced to a skeleton. Bring some good people here who can become spiritually enlightened with just 1 or 2 words." He would petition the Divine Mother, "Please give a little power to Vijay, Girish, cater Ram and M, householder devotees, so that they can prepare newcomers to a certain extent before they come to me. But because so many Calcutta people came to him for peace, he never disparaged them. He only advised them according to their capabilities. He said, why should I sting people? Do I ask everyone to renounce the world? I say live in the world and also love God. Have yoga and boga. One has to tell them to renounce mentally. I tell them to hold God in one hand and do their duty with the other. Because so many diverse types of people came to Sri Ramakrishna seeking refuge, saints and sinners, rich and poor, alcoholics, thieves, and prostitutes, critics accused him of sheltering such questionable devotees like Girish Ghosh, who once claimed there was no sin he had not committed. To this accusation, Vivekananda retorted, heaven save the mark. A formidable accusation indeed. Why did not the Mahapurusha, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, pick away and drive off in disgust the drunkard, the prostitutes, the thieves, and all the sinners of the world? In this connection, one of his biographers, Swami Chaitananda, aptly replied, there is a saying, a church is not a museum for saints, it is a hospital for sinners. Because of the Master's unconditional love, he continued to meet with those who came. And by the end of 1884, large crowds came to see him every day, so charmed and inspired by his company that they could not stay away. The direct disciples were overjoyed to see how their object of worship was now becoming an object of love for so many. However, Sri Ramakrishna had long before prophesied, when many people regard this me as God and love and respect me as such, it, meaning this body, will soon disappear. Indeed, his throat cancer developed in July 1885. How did Sri Ramakrishna reveal his love to those close to him? He was unsparing. Even in simple ways, Sri Ramakrishna was unabashedly loving. Take M, for example. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we read that on December 18th, 1883, M came to Dakshineshwar and was discussing with the Master the nature of jnana and bhakti. In the midst of Sri Ramakrishna's explanation, it would be easy for a seeming inconspicuous passage to go unnoticed. M, and this is from the Gospel. Isn't it possible to develop both jnana and bhakti by the practice of spiritual discipline? Master, through the path of bhakti, a man may attain them both. If it is necessary, God gives him the knowledge of Brahman. But a highly qualified aspirant may develop both jnana and bhakti at the same time. Such is the case with the Ishvarakotis, Chaitanya, for example. But the case of ordinary devotees is different. He then went on to describe the different types of spiritual light, so to speak, that emanate from both jnana and bhakti. Then M inserted, but what about the grace of God? Through his grace, a camel can pass through the eye of a needle. The Master, but is it possible to obtain God's grace just like that? A beggar may get a penny if he asks for it, but suppose he asks you right off for his train fare. How about that? M stood silent. The Master too remained silent. Suddenly he said, yes, it is true. Through the grace of God, some may get both jnana and bhakti. M saluted the Master and went back to the belfry where no noise of the outside world could reach. Then we read, at midday, finding that M had not yet returned, Sri Ramakrishna started toward the bell tree. But on reaching the Panchabadi, he met M, carrying his prayer carpet and water jug. M saluted the master. Sri Ramakrishna said to M, I was coming to look for you. Because of your delay, I thought you might have scaled the wall and run away. I watched your eyes this morning and felt apprehensive lest you should go away like Narayan Shastri. Then I said to myself, no, he won't run away. He thinks a great deal before doing anything. What unabashed love and concern for M the master had, like a mother for her child. See how Ramakrishna taught his disciple with such tender, loving care, so that his teachings would not disturb the disciple's mind, but would penetrate and take effect. It's well chronicled, Sri Ramakrishna's otherworldly love for Sri Sarada Devi, the Holy Mother. How in the Shodashi Puja, he worshipped her as the Divine Mother and offered to her all the fruits of his sadhana as a co-partner to his incarnation. At Dakshineshwar, the master preferred Holy Mother as his cook, for he could not touch the food of an impure person. And likewise, she knew what foods suited him, how much he could eat, and what he liked and disliked. Furthermore, Holy Mother would sit near him as he ate and talk to him so that his mind would remain on the normal plane in order that his food could be digested. So when Sri Ramakrishna's cancer advanced and he was moved to Calcutta for treatment, Holy Mother passed anxious days at Dakshineshwar, crying to the Divine Mother that she might be able to serve the Master during this critical time. However, Golapma, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, remarked to one of Mother's attendants, the Master must be annoyed with Sarada Devi because that is why he moved to Calcutta. When Holy Mother heard this, she wept, took a carriage to visit the Master, and tearfully asked him, is it true that you have come here because you're angry with me? Not at all. Who told you this? The Master asked. Gola, the mother replied. Ah, she made you cry with this falsehood? Does she not know who you are? Where is she? Let her come. When Golapma went to see the Master, he scolded her severely. Why did you make her cry with such a baseless story? Don't you know who she is? Go to her now and beg for her forgiveness, or I shall not accept your service anymore. Golapma went to the mother, fell at her feet, and begged for forgiveness, which of course the gentle mother gave. We're also well aware of Sri Ramakrishna's unparalleled love for Narayan, who came to the Master as a Brahmo devotee with a firm belief in the formless God with attributes. And therefore, he used to scoff at Sri Ramakrishna's devotion to Mother Kali. Swami Sardananda wrote in Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, the Lila Prasanga, the compassionate Master embraced almost everyone who came to him, and once he had accepted them as his own, he would not let them go, even if they wanted to. He first destroyed the impressions that had accumulated over past lives, sometimes drastically and sometimes gently, and then cast their current lives into his new, extraordinary, and everlasting mold, and thus led them to eternal peace. Narayan was no exception. He came to the Master in November 1881 as a student preparing for his FA examination at Calcutta University. At that time, he was also practicing austerities and was apprenticed by his father to a lawyer in order to secure his own future as a lawyer. This was the young Naren. But soon after, Naren was tormented with worldly suffering. His father had suddenly died, and his wealthy family was plunged into poverty with a mass of debts his father had left unpaid. Naren was forced to find a job to help his struggling family. But he faced a stark truth. His former so-called friends suddenly turned a blind eye to his crisis and avoided his company altogether. For some time, Naren struggled to make ends meet until a shift occurred in his mind. In Naren's own words, I now became absolutely indifferent to the praise and blame of the world. I was firmly convinced that I was born to earn money, support a family, or seek worldly enjoyment like others. I was secretly preparing to renounce the world. But the truth is, Sri Ramakrishna had already recognized Naren in his vision as having come from the divine realm of the seven sages. In Naren's words, when the day arrived in which I had decided to start life as a wandering monk, I heard that the master was coming to a devotee's house in Calcutta. I thought that this was very fortunate. I should see my guru before I left home forever. But when I met the master, he told me imperiously, you must come with me to Dakshineshwar today. I offered various excuses, but he wouldn't accept any of them. I had to return with him. We didn't speak much in the carriage. When we got to Dakshineshwar, I sat in his room for some time with other devotees. Then the master went into a state of ecstasy. Suddenly he came over to me, took my hand in his, and sang with tears pouring down his face, I am afraid to speak. I am afraid not to speak, for the fear rises in my mind that I shall lose you. All this time, I fought back the strong emotion I was feeling. I could do so no longer, and my tears poured down like his. I felt sure that the master knew all about my plans. The others were astonished to see us behaving this way. After the master had returned to normal consciousness, one of the devotees asked him what was the matter. He smiled and answered, it's just something between the two of us. That night, he sent the others away. Calling me to him, he said in a voice choked with emotion, I know you've come to the world to do mother's work. You can never lead a worldly life, but for my sake, stay with your family as long as I'm alive. As he said this, he began to cry again. When Naren returned home, he managed to get a temporary job in an attorney's office, but realized that without a fixed income, it was impossible to maintain his mother and sisters. But then it suddenly occurred to him that God grants the master's prayers, so he could pray on his behalf, even though Naren had never accepted Sri Ramakrishna's mother calling. He rushed to Dakshineshwar. Sir, you must speak to the Divine Mother so that my family's financial problems can be solved. But Sri Ramakrishna replied, I can't make such demands. Why don't you go and ask the mother yourself? You don't accept the mother. That's why you have all these troubles. Naren replied, I don't know the mother. Please tell the mother for me. You have to, or I won't let you go. Then the master said affectionately, my boy, I've prayed many times to the mother to remove your sufferings, but she doesn't listen to my prayers because you don't care for her. All right, Today is Tuesday, a day especially sacred to the mother. Go to the temple tonight and pray. Mother will grant whatever you ask for. I promise you that. My mother is the embodiment of pure consciousness, the power of Brahman, and she has produced this universe by mere will. What can she not do if she wishes? In Narayan's own words, when the master said that, I was fully convinced that all my suffering would cease as soon as I prayed to her. I waited impatiently for night. At 9 p.m., the master told me to go to the temple. I waited impatiently. On my way, I was possessed by a kind of drunkenness and began to stagger. I firmly believed that I would see the mother and hear her voice. I forgot everything else and became absorbed in that thought alone. When I entered the temple, I saw the mother was actually conscious and living, the fountainhead of infinite love and beauty. Overwhelmed with love and devotion, I bowed down to her again and again, praying, Mother, grant me discrimination, grant me detachment, grant me divine knowledge and devotion. Grant that I may see you without obstruction, always. Narayan then said, as soon as I returned to the master, he asked, did you pray to the mother to relieve your family's needs? I was taken aback and replied, no, sir, I forgot. What shall I do now? He said, go again and say that prayer. Narayan continued, again I went, and again I was overwhelmed and forgot my intention. I repeatedly bowed down to her and prayed for knowledge and for devotion. When I returned to the master, he smiled and asked, well, have you prayed for your need this time? Startled, I said, no, sir, I couldn't. As soon as I saw the mother, I was overwhelmed by a divine power and forgot everything. I asked only for knowledge and devotion. What's to be done now? The master said, silly boy, couldn't you control yourself a little and remember your prayer? Go back again and tell the mother what you want. Be quick. Narayan said, I went a third time, but as soon as I entered the temple, I felt a sense of deep shame. I thought, what a trifling thing I'm asking the mother. As the master says, it's like being graciously received by a king and then asking for gourds and pumpkins. It's that kind of stupidity. Am I so small-minded? In shame and remorse, I bowed down to her again and again and said, Mother, I want nothing but knowledge and devotion. Such is this divine love drama. Narayan then related, when I came out of the temple, I thought that the master must have played a trick on me. I've gone to the mother thrice, but hadn't been able to ask for what I needed. I went to the master and insisted. It was certainly you who made me intoxicated and forgetful. Now you must at least say a prayer that my mother and brothers will never lack for food and clothing. The master said, my child, you know I could never offer a prayer like that for anyone. The words wouldn't leave my mouth. I told you that you would get whatever you asked Mother for, but you couldn't do that either. You aren't destined to have worldly happiness. What am I to do about that? I said firmly, this is Narayan speaking, no, sir, I won't let you go. You must say the prayer for my sake. I'm certain my family will be freed from want if only you say they will. So at last he said, all right, they will never lack for plain food or clothing. So in conclusion, in reading and rereading the life of Sri Ramakrishna, we live and relive these intimate episodes in the life of Sri Ramakrishna that reveal new insights into the mind and heart of the avatar. Indeed, as my teacher once said, never say you have read the gospel. You read and reread, and as you begin to develop and change, you see more into the words, into the mind and the heart of the avatar. For us, each of these intimate events are vignettes of his life, all part of his divine play. For us, they are windows into his inner realm. They can aid our meditations on one who embodies both divine love and the otherworldly mind of an avatar. So in this way, each day, as we study the Master's life, we can make our own pilgrimage into the mind and heart, the avatar.